wish that it was as easy as sitting down and saying, sorry, Joshua, everything was wrong. We screwed up. Because I feel like at least it would be short, clear, to the point, and not like convoluted or have any twists and turns at all. But that's unfortunately not the situation. Sorry that we allowed Johnny, regardless of the context that we had at the time. Looking back now, knowing what we know, we are sorry that our platform was used to hurt you. And I also just wish that we could have had more information at the time so that that didn't happen.
Wow, okay. So this video, which we're going to be talking about today at some point in this video, caused actually quite a conflicted opinion. Okay, some people are really not happy with their delivery. This is Jessie Smiles and Lily, I believe her name's Lily, on the Do We Know Them podcast, and many people are not happy about their kind of reasonings as to why they didn't want to listen to Josh in the very first place. But we're going to be getting on to that, and I'm just going to give my own thoughts and feelings and kind of present both sides to this argument, because I do actually believe there must be a middle ground somewhere. So I'm going to try and present it the best that I can. So what I actually wanted to really be talking to you guys about is what Swoop has now said in a new tweet, whereby she's basically alluding to the fact that new victims have come forward. I'm assuming she's talking about Johnny Silvestri, who has basically been exposed for lying and trying to take down Josh, being Colleen's ex-husband, in a complete twist of fate. No one really expected this was going to be happening, but alas, here we are.
I have a lot to say, and there's so much more into this. It goes so deep.
What I actually want to say before we get into all of this, now I've actually had quite a few comments on my videos saying, you know, this is annoying, this is taking away, I don't just mean in my videos in general, but this whole feeling of this is super, super, super annoying. This is taking away all of the attention off of Colleen, and this is just firing it at someone else. We should be talking about Colleen, etc., etc., etc. Now, what I actually think, what I think is that I don't personally believe that this is taking away any form of attention, because Colleen is very much tied to Johnny's name, and anyone else who has now, you know, been found out to be doing shady, dodgy things behind the scenes. We're going to be finding out more about that. And this, because Colleen is not answering to any of us apart from that dreadful ukulele song, I feel like this is only amounting to more and more and more substance. Even if we're not directly talking about Colleen, we're still talking about incidences whereby none of this would even be a thing if Colleen did not exist. Do you know what I mean? Like all of these chats, all of this and that, you know, all the stuff we're going to be finding out. I really do think that this is just actually keeping it relevant, because so far I've not seen anything new that's come out about, you know, what else Colleen has been up to. I haven't heard anything else that's new relating directly to her. But by people discussing, like Johnny, for instance, and now Josh is starting to speak up, I feel like this is actually putting more and more and more pressure and more evidence on Colleen. It's actually making the story not die. The last thing that, you know, we would want for on Colleen's behalf is for this to all get swept underneath the rug. And by people discussing just the general people that sort of work for her, by discussing all of this, you're not letting it drop. And I really do think it is important. Yes, we're not talking directly about Colleen, but we're talking about the people that surrounded her, and it paints this even bigger picture. And I really do think that it is making the story sort of live on, because we do know that in news in general, you know, you have the kind of, you know, but drama is a bad thing to call it because this is so much more than that. But, you know, you have news stories and all of this, and eventually they fizzle out. This hasn't fizzled out, and I truly believe one of the reasons why it hasn't fizzled out is because you have more and more people coming forward talking about the people that would align herself with Colleen, etc., etc. That's just my own thoughts and feelings. And until Colleen, either someone else comes forward or until Colleen addresses something, you know, I think people have just got to be able to accept that there are going to be other things to talk about. That's just what I think anyway. But yeah, anyway, so what we're going to be getting onto right now is actually reading a tweet from Swoop, which you guys are going to be shocked by if you haven't already seen it. She writes, more victims have come forward privately alleging that he, an adult, was inappropriate with them as minors, this time in person, beyond chats. The evidence they shared is deeply disturbing. I will never push someone to speak publicly, but if they do, please extend compassion. Now, many people were asking on this, who are you talking about? Are you talking about Johnny? I would very heavily point in the direction that she is. I mean, I would hasten a guess, because otherwise, if more people were coming forward about something else, i.e. Josh, for instance, I'm only saying it because that's the only person I can think of that she would be, then I think she would have made that clear. She has been talking about Johnny quite a lot recently on her Twitter, so I would definitely assume that is who she's talking about, in which case it makes 100% sense as to why Johnny is completely absent off of Twitter after he's basically been running his mouth for a very long time. And I'm not saying that there is no part of maybe he at some point did feel uncomfortable or something because he wasn't really taken proper notice of. I've said this numerous times now. I really do think that he maybe thought there was something more to their friendship than there was. That's just what I'm going with. And I am completely shocked and quite happy actually that people are now coming forward, because of course people would come forward. And this isn't just, online. Swoop is literally saying that this is in-person behaviour. So I am really curious as to what exactly that is, because if this goes beyond further than we would ever have anticipated, perhaps even further than what COLLEEN would have taken it, then that is just shocking and repulsive on so many different levels. One, to the fact that, a person would do that. Number two, if depending on what it is, they've also been, deflecting and pointing fingers at other people when it's not really true. Do you see what I mean? I'm trying to explain this in a fairly easy way, but my brain gets a bit caught up with my mouth sometimes.
I wish that it was as easy as sitting down and saying, sorry, Joshua, everything was wrong. We screwed up, because I feel like at least it would be short, clear, to the point, and not like convoluted or have any twists and turns at all. But that's unfortunately not the situation.
Not only this has been happening, but we also have this podcast as well, the Do We Know Them podcast. Now, I am not familiar with this podcast. I know the person on the left is Jessie Smiles, and the woman on the right I didn't really know, called Lily. And they were basically in hot water because, and I didn't actually watch this original podcast, maybe I should go and have a little look at it, but I just can't listen to Johnny talking in circles any more than I already have done. But basically they interviewed Johnny, bearing in mind they do podcasts, they don't often do interviews. I think they said this was their second interview they've ever done, and it was really quite difficult because they had a very mixed reaction after the fact. They were fully on Johnny's side. They weren't wanting to hear Josh's point of view. They weren't given much evidence other than basically Josh responding to Johnny via Twitter and apologizing for, I'm sorry if you felt like I was having an inappropriate relationship, etc., etc., etc. And what's basically happened now is that following everything that's come out, they were being bombarded with people saying, you need to delete this, you need to, own the fact that you were wrong about Johnny, etc., etc., etc. Watch this one. They basically came up with, we owe you an explanation, or whatever the hell it was called. I watched all of it, and people are excruciatingly split. And people were hounding them for quite a long time for them to make a statement. And Josh did actually reach out to them on 2 occasions. One of which when he was very annoyed at them for not allowing him to say his piece. Josh writes, "You treated me like garbage even after I pleaded privately, publicly for you to at least consider giving me a voice. I tried for days. You rolled your eyes and didn't do your homework. You didn't care how his words would impact my life. You wanted the tea and the clicks, that is it. Your attitude was disrespectful and reckless. Your channel and intentions are literally the polar opposite of Swoop and her team. You are a prime example of why people in my shoes rarely speak up or get justice. Hope you enjoyed the money your ridiculous videos videos made you before you removed them? Also, I saw your statement. Funny how my name wasn't in there at all. Shame on you both. I'm just going to play like a few clips and try and summarize it, but I'm just basically just going to throw up some comments left and right. Some people were very confused as to why people were having a go at them, because of course they weren't privy to the knowledge that Johnny was, you know, embellishing and lying about quite a few things. They didn't know this. I even myself had made a video on a much smaller scale, basically just being a bit like, well, is Josh as much to blame? Until then completely retracting it and going, nope. Okay, no, I felt like I had the wool pulled over my eyes. Some people were very annoyed that they still in this podcast seemed like they weren't really taking Josh's claims very seriously. It's like they were still thinking that there might be like a hint of truth coming in through there, sort of, you know, just pushing Josh's story aside a little bit, although they did apologize.
So that's where we get into our demeanor. This is something that Joshua and many others have been really uncomfortable with, have been upset with us with. During that statement, although I read it in full, there was no pauses. We didn't stop to commentate on his statement in general. You can kind of see our vibe. You know, Lily's kind of like rolling her eyes and like we are like annoyed. And that was simply because, not what he was saying in his statement. It was simply because quite literally we were bothered that he was so pressing on Twitter. Now looking back, knowing everything we know why he was like kind of panicking after our interview. But instead of presenting any evidence that Johnny was not being truthful about everything he was saying, he just kind of was like, hear my side.
And because of how he phrased his tweets, we were under the impression that there was nothing else he was trying to share, and we were just going to acknowledge that statement and then move forward.
So one of the issues that many people actually had was revolving pretty much around what they just said, and the fact that they didn't really sound like they wanted to give Josh a platform because he wasn't going to provide any evidence. And the thing is that Johnny, in hindsight, which is, to be fair, what they did say at the end, Johnny provided no evidence either. So it's like you're giving one of them a platform. You're saying, you know, this person was inappropriate with me, but then they're not really giving any explanation as to how and why, which is exactly what happened on Swoop, which as a repercussion will completely tear down this other person, i.e. Josh. But then you're then not going to offer the same extension and say, hey, do you want to come on and give your side of the story? And this is the real problem. And this is actually kind of, and I understand fully when I first heard them say that, I was like, oof, like, but why wouldn't you interview the other person? The person you interviewed didn't have any evidence. Why don't you just want to extend the invitation? Because they're doing like an interview, yeah? They're doing an interview. This isn't just a little video where you're coming on and giving your thoughts and feelings. You're actually interviewing someone who are making quite serious allegations against another person, detrimental to their life allegations, but then with no evidence. And she does go on to say, you know, I've had experiences of, and I think I remember hearing about this on YouTube of, you know, having really bad essay experiences, which is something that I personally can relate to. I've never really spoken about it before. I was a very young minor. It happened on several occasions, and I'm only bringing that up because this is kind of the reasoning as to why I was very much like, well, you know, if someone comes forward, I really want to believe them, because I remember feeling fear of people not believing me, and feeling a lot of shame amounting to that, even though I was a child. This person was an adult. And I understand, like, I just wanted to be, you know, like, well, surely this person can't lie about that. And that's a very naive way of thinking. And I'm assuming that's kind of what they're doing. However, the problem is with them two is the way they sort of handled it. If you're going to be doing like a podcast, if you're just going to make a video and you're just summarizing what's happening in the sphere. But the problem is that they both kind of took it upon themselves to almost act like journalists. And a lot of people were saying that they pushed their kind of skill set a bit too far out, if this makes any sense. And they were being heavily biased in that. And hey, I'll be the first person to be like, you know, I felt like I did have the wool pulled over my eyes. I jumped to conclusions. I didn't want to not believe someone who was coming forward. And that's a very naive way of thinking. And it's something that I'm definitely going to take away and think about. But with these two, even during this video, there was kind of a lack of accountability, unless it was towards the end. It felt like they were just trying to convince the audience that actually their way of their way of the interview, their sort of thought process was in fact the correct one. And a lot of people did have quite an issue with that.
Him spread new allegations or anything. It was to talk about his experience that honestly, we again didn't think we had reason to doubt because so much of it checked out with Joshua's own statements.
The reason I think he was able to trick so many people into believing everything he said is he did take truths and things that did happen that very well may have been inappropriate and something, I mean, Joshua himself has admitted was.
One person wrote, in my opinion, this didn't really feel like an apology or a sincere sorry. It feels more like these are the ways of how this is not our fault, and I'm going to say a sorry now because people are getting angry at how one-sided we were. And also maybe a bit of, we don't have all the resources like the big creators do, so I'm not going to try to find out more about this event and just go by what I see out there. I feel like if you're going to talk about something, at least try to get all sides and be ready for backlash. And I would agree with them on this point, and the fact that I feel like if you're going to be doing sort of like almost like interview journalism, trying to almost get the story first, because if I'm correct in thinking, Johnny went to these guys first before H3 and Swoop, if I got that correct. And they probably thought this as like a, yes, we can really cash in on this whole, you know, COLLEEN storyline. This is going to be really big news, and kind of jumping into it head first without really thinking about any other avenue. I know that there are quite a few of us, especially commentators out there, you know, commentators with a lesser big audience, such as myself and others, who have definitely made the very, you know, it's very much, well, this isn't great in hindsight decision in our heads to go, you know what, I believe Johnny must be telling the truth when there really isn't a lot of evidence, and hindsight is a beautiful thing. The problem that we're having, and a lot of people do have with these two, is the fact that they've come on and they're still standing very firmly on their stance that there might be a hint of truth in what Johnny is saying. Now, Josh has turned around and he did make a tweet, which I'll try and pull up right now, where he basically said, I'm sorry if you felt like I was crossing the boundary with you. I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention, such and such. We do know, for instance, that he did give his phone number to, you know, Johnny. We know that happened. However, it wasn't in the context that Johnny was saying. Pretty much most things that Johnny said was not factual. It wasn't exactly what it was. Now, is Josh turning around and he's gotten sober and he's turned around and gone, you know what? Maybe I did behave inappropriately, but it was nowhere near on the level that Johnny is saying that it is. Yet I feel like Jesse and Lily are almost still holding on to the fact that there could be an element of truth to it. You guys might think I'm wrong for that. That's just my own personal opinion. So following on from all of this, Josh did actually release another Twitter post, which you can pause and read this. But there's one line in this that really did stand out to me. And I think this is a perfect example of probably is giving an explanation as to why he was so persistent in wanting to speak to these two, Jesse and Lily, why he wanted to make his story known, why he was trying to get through, why he was on such a Twitter rampage trying to get through to people who were covering Johnny's story. And I think it paints a picture of someone who was feeling extremely desperate and feeling like their life was out of control when these allegations started coming out about them. So this is what it said. I felt unheard, angry and ostracized, which was incredibly difficult for me given my past. My patience was limited and I spoke from a place of fear and pain. And I think that people, like he's saying, when you are coming from that sort of place, you will do almost anything. You will act extremely desperate. I think a lot of us have been put in situations where we have felt extremely desperate. The truth isn't getting out. We need to say our piece, but no one's listening. And you do react in ways that some might consider annoying, or, they keep on annoying me. They keep on badgering me for my time because that other person's quite desperate. And so it just feels like there's a lot more to this Johnny story. And after reading Swoop's tweet, it makes me feel like there really is something a lot deeper than what we can even think about knowing. That's just what I think. And it makes me feel more sorry for Josh, because if it does come out that Johnny has been doing X, Y, and Z, whatever might be the case, and has been basically trying to shift the blame onto Josh this whole time, then I think that is absolutely god awful, and I have this sneaky suspicion that is really what's been going on. Of course, allegedly, that's just what I think. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it's been quite clean world heavy at the minute. It's just been something I've been quite interested in covering. I've been spending my time watching it, so I will post other kind of content quite soon. But for right now, have a wonderful day wherever you are in this world. Take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and I'll catch up with you guys in the next video.
But if it is out there, we want to know about it, we want to address it, and we want to make it right in any way that we possibly can, because I feel like that's really the only thing we can do now.
Absolutely. We do want to, again, apologize to Joshua for being complicit in spreading information that was not true. And we're sorry that he had to experience that, because while he has taken accountability for some stuff, there's no reason that he should be being accused of things he didn't do. And it was never our intention to try and purposely spread that or ignore anything that would contradict that. So again, we're very sorry, Joshua.